Station, this is Houston. Are you ready for the event?
Houston, this is Station. We are ready for the event.
Insider, this is Mission Control Houston. Please call Station for a voice check.
Station, this is Morgan McFall Johnson with Insider. How do you hear me?
Hello, Morgan. We have you loud and clear.
Great. Hello, Megan and Mark. Thanks so much for talking with me today. It seems like you've had a really eventful couple of months up there. How are things on station? Are you seeing any lingering effects from the recent attitude loss incident?
No lingering effects. We are doing great up here. We've been had a little time to recharge, and we're looking forward to Cygnus arrival tomorrow. So it's going to be bringing us a whole lot of new science, and so we're looking forward to jumping in and starting to work on all of that.
Well, that's great. Could you tell me a little bit about what it was like on station while the Nauka module was firing those thrusters? What were y'all doing that whole time, and what was the mood among the crew?
So I'll start with the last part. The mood amongst the crew immediately was, hey, let's check what's going on. But the ground said, hey, we're checking into it. And then honestly, for me, I said, okay. I went back to doing the maintenance task I was doing before, didn't worry about it a bit. Then when the ground called us back and said we need you to get into the procedure to respond to this, I thought, okay, this is real. But we've been trained to deal with a much more challenging situation, one where the ground was not available to help us out for a much longer period of time. So from my perspective, it seemed like it was simpler to deal with than many of the things we're trained with on the ground.
Great. And what has the recovery process been like? It seems like you're, turned around ready to receive the Cygnus module, but did anything need to be fixed or put back into place after that incident?
For the crew up here, no, we really we had a few tasks that we took care of while Mission Control Houston and Moscow were looking into the immediate event and recovering from that event. But we basically got right back on the timeline. We got the information as it came to our control centers. They shared that with us, and then we get back to work. Our job up here is to conduct the science and to keep the space station running, and so we do that. And we know that the ground teams are taking care of their side of the house as well.
Okay, lots happening in low Earth orbit lately. Megan, you're one of the last people to see the Hubble Space Telescope in person, so I'm curious for your thoughts on its recent technical issues. Obviously, it's fixed now, but this is a sign of Hubble's age. So what were your thoughts during that month when NASA was troubleshooting that?
Well, to be honest with you, I had a lot of confidence during that time period, and I wasn't in contact with anyone that was working those problems, but I have worked closely with those teams in the past, and I know what they're capable of. They know that instrument so well, and you're right that it has been in space for over 30 years, but we've had people continuously operating it and getting amazing results from it. They know that instrument so well that they obviously took their time to examine what the problem was and slowly kind of bring everything back online to get those systems back. So I did have a lot of confidence during that time period, was not involved at all, but enjoyed the updates that they gave, and then of course celebrated when they had the success and were able to bring the telescope back. When we did the servicing mission, it's been 13 years ago. At the time we said like maybe 5, maybe 10 more years of life, and it's already past that. So I think Hubble's got a lot more in store for us over the years.
Yeah, and we look forward to seeing what those things are in store. There is another recent event that I wanted to ask you both about. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change released the first part of its 6th assessment on Monday. That report tells us that we're probably going to hit 1.5 degrees of warming by 2040, that extreme weather will get more extreme, the oceans are rising, warming, and acidifying, and that, some of those changes will last thousands of years. Even if you haven't read up on the report yourself, I imagine you're both familiar with the basic science, and you do have this rare vantage point. So what are your reactions to this report? What are you thinking as you go about your life up there and you look down at Earth and you know what's happening to it?
So you're right that we have, over many years, scientists around the world have been sounding this alarm bell. So while this report is recent, and you're right, I haven't had a chance to examine it in detail, it is maybe not as surprising as you might think. So this is a warning for the entire global community. It's going to take the entire global community to face this and to work through these challenges. We're very fortunate at NASA. We have a recent partnership with ESA to look at climate change, to conduct climate change research and start to hopefully figure out some solutions. The International Space Station is a great observing platform, and we as humans can look at the Earth. We're not individually doing science, but of course the observations that we make, we can share with the public to show our vantage point. And recently, of course, we've been, very saddened to see fires over huge sections of the Earth, not just the United States. Of course, big tropical storms, those are always coming, and potentially the flooding that comes after them. And we can see all of those effects from up here. And the other thing that we can see, of course, is the very thin lens of atmosphere that is what protects our Earth and everything on it. And so we see how fragile that is, and we know how important it is. Fortunately, the International Space Station also hosts several research platforms that provide data about the Earth's environment. There's the SAGE-3 experiment that looks at ozone, also JEDI that looks at forestry. And so there's some important research that's going on, and NASA is absolutely going to be a part of that as the global community tries to solve these challenges.
And I just reinforce that from this vantage point, it's really clear that compared to the size of the Earth, which is massive, and it's so massive, it's hard for humans to believe we could have an impact on it. But that atmosphere that Megan mentioned is so thin compared to the size of the Earth. And that's the layer, that is the place that we need to be able to live. So it's important that we take ownership of whatever we can do to help maintain it.
Well, thank you for sharing that unique perspective with us. Another thing that's changing is spaceflight. I'm sure you've both been asked about space tourism before, but with the launches of Jeff Bezos and Richard Branson, there's this common thread of criticism emerging, the idea that billionaires are using their money to go on joyrides instead of solving problems here on Earth. What's your take on that? What's your response to that criticism?
Honestly, I think this is a great question that ties into the previous question. The more people, whether professional astronauts, very wealthy people who can have an impact on how people are employed and public policy, the more people that have this type of vantage point that we get and have a heightened awareness of the thinness of that atmosphere, the better off from my perspective. And honestly, I think it's in our best interest as explorers for us to have the capability that we currently have in low Earth orbit to be something where the government isn't the only customer for private industry. Ideally, this industry grows well enough that we're one of many customers, so it becomes less expensive for the taxpayer and something that allows us as NASA to explore further into the solar system.
Okay, and there are many more civilians planning to fly to space in the next year, so just curious if you have any advice for them, or alternatively, what's the best advice that you've gotten from astronauts before you?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I think one of the things that you realize if you spend any significant amount of time in space is that the things that would be impossible for me to do on Earth, I can do very simply in space. It's sort of like having superpowers. So I can lift things that on Earth I would need, 2 or 3 people to help me lift. But things that are very, very simple on Earth suddenly become really hard. Even something simple like sleeping, right, or brushing your teeth. You have to really think about how am I going to do this successfully and without making a mess. And so I think it's a little bit like other exploring that people have done over the generations. Whenever you're exploring new territory, you have to be willing to put up with a little discomfort and some risk, obviously. And so you have to have grit, I think, in your personality to help you get through those things and enjoy those situations.
Yeah, Megan, has anything surprised you about the space station experience, aside from those things you mentioned? What's your favorite part been, and what's been the most difficult adjustment?
one of the great things about the training that we have over the years is that it's very detailed. And I have flown in space before, and I've worked very closely with people who have lived and worked in space. And so I would say there wasn't a whole lot about coming here that surprised me, which is not to say that it wasn't exciting to experience for myself. So I feel like I kind of knew what to expect, but then actually getting to live it was still really fun and really exciting and really challenging as well. So as much as you prepare, the day-to-day life can still be very challenging. In terms of what I have enjoyed the most, I think the way that we move around in a micro-G environment is just so much fun. Getting to fly, whether you're sort of, high speed or slow speed, maneuvering around the environment is really fun. And then, of course, viewing the Earth, we recently have been enjoying some auroras, which are just incredible. And, having seen the photos, again, I wasn't surprised by the auroras, but I was kind of bowled over by how breathtaking they really were, and how mesmerizing it was to see it with my own eyes.
Wow, that's great. That must be quite a sight. The space station has a limited number of years left, and China's building its own space station, so the circumstances of human presence in low Earth orbit, it seems like they're going to change. Not clear how far into the future that is, but how does that play out for you two day to day on the space station, and what would the ideal future in orbit look like to you?
So day to day for us, we have so many things that we have to pay very careful attention to that I actually don't spend a lot of time, especially during the workday, thinking about how a Chinese space station is going to affect things. I do believe that we perform better when there's competition involved, so that's a positive thing. Good point. Megan just reminded me that another thing about this future with more commercial participation, with more countries being involved, it gives the humanity an opportunity for that much more science.
Yeah, absolutely. Mark, I also wanted to ask you about your experience on the station. If you do give up your return seat to Russia's film crew mission, it seems like you might have a shot at breaking Scott Kelly's record 340-day space flight. Have you thought about that? How does that prospect make you feel? And how do you plan to make the most out of your year in space if that does happen?
Well, I did hear that, but I don't think it's really my record. I think it would be the whole team's. I think it's just another step forward for humanity. And I also don't expect that to be a record that would last for very long, because we're doing bigger and better things all the time. And especially as we eventually get to Mars, that's gonna be a drop in the bucket compared to a Mars flight. The way I'm dealing with the possibility of having a longer than normal flight, which actually for Megan and my planned flight right now, a 6-month flight is a long flight. All I'm really trying to do is just focus on the day and recognizing that this could be my last time in space ever. Just trying to find things to appreciate about every moment is really the way I'm dealing with an uncertain amount of time, by just focusing on what I'm certain about, what I'm living at the moment.
What are some of the things that you've appreciated, especially lately, from that perspective?
A lot of good laughs talking to my crewmates, the view out the window. As Megan mentioned, the freedom of motion inside the space station. I can't do a double backflip or a single backflip on the surface of the Earth, but I might even get 3 in without hitting my head on something up here. The science that the sense of purpose that we are working every day and contributing to humanity is a wonderful job to have. And I'm sure I could go on and on if I just spent a little more time thinking about it. But thanks for the question.
Yeah, the flipping does sound really fun. Megan, before launch, you told me that this will probably be your last mission for the sake of your family. Do you still feel that way? And if so, how are you making the most of this space flight?
I do. I think that this is likely to be my last space flight, but you never know. Maybe we'll all go as a family one day. That would be fun, maybe. But I think Mark really said it correctly. You try to experience the moment, enjoy the moments as they come, the time together as a crew, the camaraderie, the shared experience, even when that shared experience is frustration. We are contributing to something that we all believe in, that we believe is larger than ourselves as individuals. We're very fortunate to represent the huge team on Earth that makes all of this happen. And so, that's kind of a big thing, but to be able to remember that and experience that on a daily basis, I didn't come here to be frustrated. I didn't come here to be annoyed for 6 months. And so you really have to realize, hey, I'm in space. I'm floating. I'm flying. I'm enjoying this amazing view. I'm going to experience a little bit of that joy every day.
Yeah, dealing with that isolation and being trapped in a small space with the same people for months and months is an experience that many of us might be able to relate to now after the last year. And you mentioned those frustrations, and there are difficulties with that, especially when you're operating such a big piece of machinery. How does the crew deal with those kinds of frustrations and challenges on an interpersonal level?
I would say for this crew, this bunch of us, it's humor. We deal with frustration with humor, and I would say interpersonally, our crew gets along really, really well. And the frustrations have to do with, where did I put my spoon? Things like I'm living in microgravity, and it's hard to keep track of my stuff when I'm trying to do something very simple. So we can share that experience. We can make jokes about it, and I think we use humor to help one another and to help ourselves. So hopefully that's something that is meaningful for folks on the ground. We watch programs together, sometimes movies, or we had fun with the Olympics and had our own Olympic games. And so just trying to share the experience together, I think, is what really helps us.
And actually, another thing, I think a very important thing for a crew member on a flight like this is the relationship you have with yourself. So there's times when we get frustrated with ourselves, and you've got to kind of give yourself a break. Decide that, wait a minute, I'm doing okay. Yeah, I just made a mistake, but okay, but next time I'll do better. And just be a good friend to yourself. That really goes a long way when you're on a space flight and isolated from most of humanity.
Yeah, sounds like those will be important attitudes to carry forward once as humanity is entering longer-term space flights. Megan, how's your family planning to celebrate the completion of this whole years-long Crew Dragon saga? And also from both of you, I'd love to hear more about those Olympics games.
I think for my family, when I come home and have gone through the initial recovery, a lot will depend on, sort of what's the state of the Earth at that time. I know that we would love to do some travel. I would love to visit other family. And, as soon as we can, we'd like to hit the road and start visiting some of our beautiful national parks that I've been spotting from up here. I've been planning trips, camping trips, while I've been up here thinking, oh, that looks like a nice place to visit. So we'll look forward to being able to take our son to some of those places.
As far as the Olympics are concerned, as a member of the Soyuz crew, and Megan was a member of the Dragon crew as we competed against each other, but really with each other, we did give medals to each other, but it was always unanimous, and I wish you could see, set to the music they chose, the entire floating in space routine that they did, because it was really, really impressive. And they won the medal for that one.
Very nice. That sounds like a fun activity. Quick last question for you, Megan. Did Theo ever get his dog after Bob came back, and will the dog be accompanying you on your road trip to the national parks?
We did adopt a dog from a local shelter. His name is Shadow, and he's a sweetie. And so we're very grateful to have him in our lives. And we'll see. He doesn't much like car. He doesn't like riding in the car, which I think is an unusual thing for a dog. But hopefully, as we get more experience with that, he'll get more comfortable, and we'll be able to take him with us.
Great. Well, thank you so much, both of you, for your time. Congratulations on everything, and good luck getting home safe.
Thanks so much, Morgan. Thanks for joining us aboard the space station today.
Station, this is Houston ACR. That concludes the event.
Thank you to all participants from Insider Station. We are now resuming operational audio communications.